Greetings. My name's Brad Miner. I'm Senior Fellow of the Faith and Reason Institute, but perhaps more importantly, Senior Editor of The Catholic Thing. If you don't know The Catholic Thing, you should get to know us. We are a daily column series. That means 1,000 words, approximately, 365 days of the year, by one or another of many, many Catholic luminaries. And we discuss the Catholic faith in terms of its theology, in terms of its sociology, in terms of its philosophy, in terms of its art, in terms of, for that matter, everything that is Catholic we discuss. And we hope that you will find us at thecatholicthing.org on a daily basis. And we do these podcasts. And today, I have the great pleasure and privilege to talk to my friend, Dr. Elizabeth A. Mitchell. And Dr. Mitchell is the author of a brand new book. I've got it here. You might not be able to see it so well, called Saint Edith Stein's Aesthetic, Beauty and Sanctity, Masterpiece of the Divine Artist. It has a wonderful preface, too, by the great Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke. So, Dr. Elizabeth, before we jump into talking about Saint Edith Stein, I want you to tell us a little bit about you, about especially where you grew up, about your education in Rome, and about the great educational work you're doing now.
Well, Brad, thank you for having me. And it's a joy to be here. And it's a joy to be doing some special work for the Catholic Thing, because our benefit as a Catholic world from the Catholic Thing is immeasurable. Daily as we receive the columns and then as the different educational opportunities come out, the Catholic Thing is just pouring formation back into the Catholic world. So a big thank you. I think I speak for many, many readers and many, many listeners when I tell you that.
Let me interject. One thing that I meant to say in my brief intro is that Dr. Mitchell is going to be teaching a course about Edith Stein. So we'll come back to that in a minute, but now you go on with what you were saying.
Sure. I'm a native of Wisconsin. Very, very proud native of Wisconsin, but first generation Wisconsin. My father is from Great Britain and my mother is from the East Coast. And so they both came to Wisconsin for education, for their university and then doctoral degrees, and loved it so much that they decided to call this state home. And I think it was the Lord's plan. There are some incredible graces that have been given to the state of Wisconsin, not least of which the approved Marian apparition of Our Lady in Champion, Wisconsin, the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe that Cardinal Burke has built, a wonderful shrine of Our Lady Help of Christians called Holy Hill here near Milwaukee. And he, through my parents, the Lord wanted to found a school in Wisconsin. So my main work after my graduate degree, which I got in Rome, my main work is to be the head of school of an independent Catholic K-12. And I love every minute of it, from teaching the 3-year-olds to teaching the seniors in high school. There's something universal about education in its Catholicity, depending on, it doesn't really matter what age you're teaching. It's the same profound experience. So I love what I do.
Well, you're very good at it, I happen to know, because I've seen the test scores from Trinity Academy in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which are simply astonishing. But a little bit more about that education in Rome.
So I was looking for a graduate school after I completed my undergrad at Franciscan University of Steubenville. And I looked at different programs, and I found an excellent program at a pontifical university in Rome in church communications. And it was a multi-tiered degree, which was one of the things that drew me to it in particular, a study of the humanities and how the church communicates through the humanities, sacred art, music, literature, over the ages. It was a professional technical training in journalism and media. And then it was also a canonical understanding of the structure of the church as an institution. And I can't say enough about the degree and its multifaceted depth. And so I did a master's degree in Rome, and then immediately after that, I did my doctoral degree in Rome. And I honed in on both my master's and doctorate on the artistic vision that Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross offers to the world through her writings, her understanding of God as a divine artist who creates us as masterpieces through whom he communicates his message back out to the world. So it was a form of communications that I think the church naturally expresses so powerfully in beauty and art.
So in case we hadn't mentioned it previously, Saint Benedicta of the Cross is Edith Stein. So let's talk about her background, her education, and her extraordinary, all too short life.
She has an amazing story. So she's known as Saint Edith Stein just as strongly as she's known as Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. She often signed letters as a religious both ways. She wrote to the Holy Father during the persecution of the Jews in World War II and was asking for the church to speak out more strongly. She was known in the world as Dr. Edith Stein, and she was at a top tier of the elites in the phenomenological movement that came out of Germany. So she was a profound philosopher in her own right. She converts to Catholicism through a series of encounters with Christians whose life witness transforms her understanding of God, truth, Christ, and she ultimately becomes a cloistered Carmelite nun. And she dies, as you mentioned, her all too short life. She dies there's a retribution of the Nazis against the Catholic Church in Holland, where she ends up. And as a reprisal against the Catholic Church speaking out against the deportation of Jews, converts from Judaism to Catholicism are arrested in a specific roundup and sent to Auschwitz. And she dies in Auschwitz as a martyr of the Catholic faith on August 9th, 1942.
A feast day that we just celebrated last week.
Exactly. This is her month, and she was arrested on August 2nd, and she has a 7-day journey to her death on August 9th.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how she was formed as a philosopher. She had as her thesis advisor, I guess, or was it Edmund Husserl, right?
Yes, that is her dissertation advisor, which was very bold on her end because she was a neophyte in philosophy. And about a year in, she approaches him. He's known as the father of phenomenology, and she asks him to instruct her in her doctorate. And he agrees. He can see her brilliance, and she ends up in philosophy through the providence of God as an answer to her deep interior search for the truth. She is searching for the truth. She leaves the Jewish faith. She becomes really a non-believer. And then she seeks through academia the truth. And she comes quite close to despair in her early university years that perhaps there is no ultimate truth. And she goes from psychology then to philosophy. She goes to Göttingen to study at the heart of the phenomenological movement. And there, again, by the providence of God, she meets multiple converts to Christianity and Catholicism from other faith traditions, and she encounters the truth. And very interesting in terms of her Carmelite trajectory, she reads the life of St. Teresa of Avila, closes the book and says, this is the truth. The life witness of St. Teresa of Avila was the final witness that gives St. Edith Stein the direction for her entire life. She has a contemplative vocation, and about 8 years later becomes a Carmelite.
And we think of John Paul II, a brother Pole, as a religious figure, but he was also a great philosopher, and he was a devotee of Husserl as well.
The incredible, I think, fruits of Pope St. John Paul II and St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross that they draw and give to the church through their philosophical underpinnings is an understanding of the formation of the human person and a search in the modern world for how is the human person being formed and becoming fully who God intends them to be. And they look at that. Stein has a final work that she wrote in the Carmel called Finite and Eternal Being. But it starts out, she writes it years before as a play in which Edmund Husserl and St. Thomas Aquinas meet at a birthday party for Edmund Husserl and sit down and have a wonderful heart-to-heart about their two philosophical approaches to being and the truth. And it's that play that she writes as a philosophy student that becomes her Catholic ultimate work, Finite and Eternal Being. And it's looking at eternal being as our calling and the fullness of our personal formation.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Michael Pokolik's piece. I think we ran it yesterday at the Catholic thing about Maximilian Kolbe, but Michael talked about the extraordinary series of events that happened when Kolbe found himself in Auschwitz, and in a moment in which some people were going to be put into a starvation chamber. And as many people will know, Kolbe gave himself up in the place of another. And Michael talks about the divine providence that put everything into order in such a way that happened in that way on that day, in that place. And that seems to be very much something that happened in Teresa Benedicta's life as well.
I read the column by Dr. Pokolik. It was outstanding. And Dr. Pokolik makes the point that the irony, the providential irony, is that in their diffidence, the Nazi guards didn't say, well, great, if you want to join them in the starvation bunker, we can fit 11. We don't just need 10. But they allow St. Maximilian Kolbe to offer his life for Francis Gajowniczek. And the layman is freed. The layman expresses his concern for his wife and children. And the layman survives the war and has that testimonial of how St. Maximilian Kolbe gives his life for him. And as you say, in a particular camp, in a particular bunker, on a particular day, all of the incarnate side of our lived existence of our faith.
Yeah. Yeah. So now let's talk about the 4-part course that you're going to begin teaching on September 10th. And it's not just St. Teresa Benedicta, not just Edith Stein, but also involves another Carmelite. Well, it will surely involve the great Teresa of Avila, but also St. John of the Cross. How do they come together?
So there are these moments where the great saints have encounters with one another. And when that happens, it's incredibly fruitful to see how they converse in contemplation with one another. And so Saint Teresa Benedicta was asked by her order in the final year of her life to write an analysis and synthesis of the corpus of work of St. John of the Cross. And the reason was the 400th anniversary of the birth of St. John of the Cross. And so this academic work is given to St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. And her Mother Superior says that in those last 10 or 12 months of her life, St. Teresa Benedicta was living, sleeping, breathing the spirituality of St. John of the Cross. And the output is the work, The Science of the Cross, which is the last work that St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross wrote. In fact, they know that it was accessed by her in her academic work on her desk the day she was arrested. And what her Mother Superior says is that we get the contemplation of St. Teresa Benedicta of St. John of the Cross represented to us through the crystal clear language of this modern saint. And so it's really going to be a walk with St. John of the Cross, going back to these profound foundations of union with God. St. John of the Cross teaching us how to come to union with God. And it's a lived experience. And it's called a science, therefore, by St. Teresa Benedicta, meaning a lived knowledge. And we're going to go along the way reading the letters that St. Teresa Benedicta was writing at the time. In fact, I have one here to just read a sentence from. On August 5th, 1942, 4 days before she's killed in Auschwitz, when Teresa Benedicta is already in a holding camp on her way to Auschwitz, she gets a letter penned and she says, could you possibly write to the Ursulines in Venlo and ask for the manuscript if they haven't already sent it? The Science of the Cross had been sent to be typed up by another Catholic in a convent in Venlo. Stein had been arrested and that Catholic woman had been arrested. And on her way to Auschwitz, she's trying to get that manuscript given to the world, given to her order, given to the church, not lost forever. And we have it. It's a miraculous, really, I think, manuscript that survived those kinds of pressures and challenges.
Yeah, there was so much that the Nazis destroyed in their contempt for everything that wasn't Nazi. When she was proposed for sainthood, and John Paul II, of course, wanting very much to see her raised to the altars, there was controversy because she was referred to as a martyr. And people said, no, she was not killed because she was a Roman Catholic nun. She was killed because she was a Jew. Now, what's your view on that particular controversy?
That is the thing for us all to become experts on, because she is acknowledged by the Catholic Church as having been killed in hatred of the Catholic faith. And so in the Positio, which is the documentation behind the canonization of St. Teresa Benedicta, two things emerge. One, her canonization cause was opened as a pure, straightforward canonization cause because of the devotion to her that sprang up immediately upon her death. They were interceding to her in the camps. They called her Edith Stein. She had been there and they were praying to her.
I'm sorry, what was that? What was that phrase?
Edith Stein, Little Edith.
Little Edith.
That was how she was referred to by the those who knew her in the camps and those who then came to the camps, meaning she had such an aura of holiness about her that the other prisoners turned to her spiritually after she had passed on from this world. And they assumed that when her transport left, she was killed. So her cause was opened up as a cause for heroic faith, hope, and charity. It was subsequently reopened as a martyrdom cause about halfway through, when the evidence came forth that after the bishops in Holland had spoken out in union against the deportation of the Jews, Stein was arrested, as were a number of other Catholics, and they went to their death in union with the church in witness to the challenge of the Catholic Church against the Nazis. And so it's very, very important to understand that she was killed in hatred of the faith. The Positio says that while the informal or contextual reason why she's killed is the hatred of the Nazis against Catholics and Jews, so the historical context needed to be there, the formal and immediate cause of her death was retribution against the Catholic Church in Holland.
Yeah.
So it's just a fascinating, but painful. It's very painful. It was painful for Stein's own family to come to grips with this identity she has that's a shared Jewish Catholic identity. She has a niece who has done quite a bit of editorial work on many of the publications of her works now, which is quite astounding. And she did have a sister. Edith had a sister named Rosa, who also converted to the Catholic faith and died with her at her side in Auschwitz, was arrested with her.
Well, she's one of my favorite saints. It's one of the more extraordinary stories, as is the story of Maximilian Kolbe. But really, the stories of all saints are Well, they're the reason why we have saints and why we declare them to be saints and how important they are in educating us in the faith. Well, now listen, in the past, you and I have talked for hours at a time, but this is all the time we have for today. So I want to thank you, and I want to urge all the people who are watching this on YouTube or at the Catholic Thing to please sign up for Dr. Mitchell's course, because it's going to be an extraordinary experience. And you can find it, if I haven't said this before, and I should have said it 4 times, at thecatholicthing.org. Thank you for watching. Dr. Mitchell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad, and God bless you.
God bless you.